It's been a 10-year journey. Now, there are the issues of today. Now, clearly, two people becoming independents, the politics of the day, majority, minority governments are real. I just think that this is an incredibly important moment for Tasmania and Tasmanian football. It is now an arrangement that is, if you want an AFL team, it comes with a stadium. Now, the people had their views about that, but it's now funded. It's been funded by the state government, in part, which is what people are talking about. There's $360 million going down there from the Australian Football League. There's $305 million come from the federal government. And it is something that comes together. You can't have one without the other. And it's actually now a moment that will actually change Tasmania. And the people who are not convinced of that, again, I'll refer you to Adelaide Oval in South Australia. I'll refer you to Optus Stadium in Perth. So it's easy to oppose things. It's easy to point to alternate uses of capital. But actually, the business case around this, about actually tourism, construction, economic impact, pride, there is a demonstrated business case, and the business case for this for Tasmanians, with significant funding coming externally, I think significant. So people will play that out, but in the end, I think Tasmania wants an AFL team, and I think the deal is funded. I'll let the politics play out day to day. That's the point I'm making.
Is there a scenario?
Thank you, Deputy President. And look, I'm pleased to be able to make a contribution to this debate, to give a bit of context to some of the things I've said publicly down in Tasmania on this issue, and it is something I feel strongly about, and I don't resile from anything I've said. I, with Senator Brown and with Senator Lambie, and I suspect others in this debate, support Tasmania getting a team. We deserve it. We have a fine AFL history. We've provided some of the best players in the AFL's history over many years, and that's something we could continue to do with a team of our own and an AFLW team as well. But look, I don't agree with the idea of the federal government funding a stadium, but I'm not going to let Senator Brown and the Australian Labor Party off the hook that easily. You can't come in here and say that that the Premier of Tasmania, Mr Rockliff, isn't listening, and then say that you haven't made your minds up yet. The Australian government have to actually put a decision on the record at some point, and I look forward to the day that that happens. And going out and listening to the community is a good start to do that. But I do actually want to make a couple of points around the stadium and, of course, around the Tasmanian government. Any day of the week I'd back Rockliff over White, Premier Rockliff over Opposition Leader White, because you know what? The Tasmanian Labor Party can't even really come up with a position. They've got to go and have a taxpayer-funded referendum to figure out whether they support the stadium. So they want to spend taxpayers' money to figure out what position they should have to fund a stadium with taxpayers' money. So I tell you what, at least I know where I stand. Premier Rockliff knows where he stands. The Labor Party in Tasmania, federally and at the state level, don't know where they stand. But back to a point that Senator Brown made, which I do agree with, and I know Senator Brown is a fine Tasmanian who actually does have her state's interests at heart. I know that very clearly, along with her Tasmanian colleagues. The AFL should take note. They should not treat Tasmanians as mugs. They landed a historic deal for broadcast rights, $4.5 billion, historic, self-described. Private money. Why aren't they putting any of that into the construction of a stadium? Why aren't they being asked to fund this arrangement that would enable us to get a team? If it's so important to them, to the club presidents, for us to have a team, why don't they do something about it? Instead of asking the taxpayers of Tasmania to foot the bill, well, I'll tell you what, Senator Brown, if you want to stand up and say that the Australian government won't fund the stadium, you do it today. You've got an opportunity. There's another Labor speaker, and I'm looking forward to that being put on the record. But if your view is that the AFL should fund it, then make that clear in the next contribution, and the Australian government won't fund it. We should be putting the asset as a united team on the AFL, as has been suggested by Senator Lambie, to fund this stadium. Let's get them to do what they're telling us we need to do, not Tasmanians to have to choose between whether they get Commonwealth funding for a hospital bed or a football stadium. Senator Lambie is right, and we should be backing this point. Gillan McLachlan and the AFL should be doing the right thing by every person that wants an AFL team, and they should be funding it. $4.5 billion sloshing around over the next few years could go to something good, like building a stadium if that's what they think we need to have. Having said that, though, Senator Brown was also right on the fact that we are the only jurisdiction being asked to build a stadium to have what everyone else has. They love picking on the little state. Yes, we've got 12 senators, and I think it's time we made our voice heard collectively. The AFL can no longer treat us like mugs. And if they've got a really good case to make, I hope they make it. I hope they can tell the Australian government why using $375 of that finite resource, taxpayers' money, is better spent on this than anything else, than on housing, than on more roads, than on hospital beds, than on sorting out that scourge of family and domestic violence. If AFL want to actually point to reasons that funding a stadium with taxpayers' money is more important than funding any of the things I've just mentioned, I'd love to hear it. Because I tell you what, when I go out and face the voters, they are not going to take the lines that the AFL might offer me. I'd love it if they had to go out and face the electors like members of parliament have to, but they don't. They can get away with seeking to blackmail our state, but we should not allow that to happen. The AFL should do the right thing, and the Labor Party should make clear what their position is, state and federal.
Senator Billick.
Thank you, Ms.